On the issue of whether you're trying to squeeze an elephant into a mouse hole, and the question of whether this is fundamentally different from anything that OSHA has ever done before, I want to see if it might be fundamentally different in at least two respects and get your answer to the question. Most OSHA regulations, all of the ones with which I'm familiar, affect employees when they are on the job, but not when they are not on the job. And this affects employees all the time. If you're vaccinated while you're on the job, you're vaccinated when you're not on the job. Isn't this different from anything OSHA has done before in that respect?
So two responses to that. First, of course, there's also a mask and test option here. So I think even on that analysis.
Right now I'm talking just about the vaccines.
So focusing just on vaccination, I think that that's a way to describe it, that it also provides protection when you're not at work. But OSHA was directly targeting and trying to provide the protection at work. And I don't think there's any basis in the text of the statute to think that this kind of protection is off limits.
Suppose this is a little science fiction, but maybe it will illustrate a point. Suppose that this protection were provided not by the administration of a vaccine, but by waving a wand over employees when they arrive at work. And suppose that wand also had the capability of taking away this protection when the employee leaves work. Would OSHA have the authority to tell employees, you must have this wand waved over you when you arrive, but you can't have it taken off when you leave?
No, I don't think that OSHA would have that authority.
All right, so it's different in that respect. And here's another respect in which it may be different. And I don't want to be misunderstood in making this point, because I'm not saying the vaccines are unsafe. The FDA has approved them. It's found that they're safe. It's said that the benefits greatly outweigh the risks. I'm not contesting that in any way. I don't want to be misunderstood. I'm sure I will be misunderstood. I just want to emphasize I'm not making that point. But is it not the case that these vaccines and every other vaccine of which I'm aware and many other medications have benefits and they also have risks? And that some people who are vaccinated and some people who take medication that is highly beneficial will suffer adverse consequences. Is that not true of these vaccines? And if that is that true?
That can be true, but of course there is far, far greater risk from being vaccinated by orders of magnitude.
Right, there is some risk. Do you dispute that?
There can be a very minimal risk with respect to some individuals, but again, I would emphasize that I think that there would be no basis to think that these FDA-approved and authorized vaccines are not safe and effective.
No, I'm not making that point. I tried to make it as clear as I could. I'm not making that point. I'm not making that point. I'm not making that point. There is a risk, right? Has OSHA ever imposed any other safety regulation that imposes some extra risk, some different risk on the employee, so that if you have to wear a hard hat on the job, wearing a hard hat has some adverse health consequences? Can you think of anything else that's like this?
I can't think of anything else that's precisely like this, but I think that to suggest that OSHA is precluded from using the most common, routine, safe, effective, proven strategy to fight an infectious disease at work would be a departure from how this statute should be understood.
Can I just say, General, that regulators think of risk trade-offs constantly when they make regulations? That there are constant situations in which there are risk trade-offs. Risks on both sides, but one risk vastly outweighs another risk, and that comes up throughout regulatory space.
That's absolutely true, and one of the risks that OSHA was guarding against here was the risk that unvaccinated workers pose to other workers, because they are so much more likely to transmit this deadly disease to them.
What type of workers? To vaccinated workers?
Yes, the grave danger finding was based on unvaccinated workers.
I thought the Secretary disclaimed that.
Yeah, the grave danger finding is limited to unvaccinated workers who are far more likely to contract it from their coworkers as well.
That's not a concern for us, is it? We can't sustain this on that ground, that this is helpful to the vaccinated workers because the unvaccinated workers present a risk to them.
Oh, to be clear, they present a risk to other unvaccinated workers who might be older, who might have other comorbidities.
All of whom have balanced the risks differently, maybe very foolishly, but they want to balance the risks presented to their health in a different way. And OSHA says, no, you can't do that. And that applies when you're on the job and also when you're not on the job and for the rest of your life, because you have to take these vaccines, unless the testing option is valuable.
Well, one small factual correction, if I could, and then a broader legal point. I think it's wrong to say that everyone who's unvaccinated is just assuming the risk. Some people can't get vaccinations for medical reasons. Some people have deeply held religious beliefs and are entitled to religious exemptions. And OSHA is entitled to try to protect those unvaccinated workers no matter the reason they're unvaccinated. Just on the broader legal point, the idea that OSHA is powerless to act to protect workers if they simply want to assume the risk is inconsistent with how the OSHA Act has been understood throughout its history. OSHA frequently requires employers to require that the employees use protective gear or take precautions.
Isn't it the case that most of the time there's this strong reason for saying that it isn't a defense to an OSHA Act charge that the employers assumed the risk voluntarily, that under most circumstances, employers have an incentive to avoid compliance with, to avoid the costs and inconvenience of a regulation. And so we don't want to have put the employees under pressure, overt or implied, to waive the protection of a regulation, a protective regulation. But there's no such incentive here. They're free, the vaccines are free, and to the extent they keep workers healthy and on the job, it's in the interest of the employers to have them vaccinated.
Well, certainly the fact that workers in the past have not wanted to use certain protections has not provided a defense to regulations that have been issued under the OSHA Act.